It's January the 3rd, 2018. This is Grant Cameron, and this is an update in the Pentagon UFO disclosure. I'd like to start again by a slide I've shown many times. There's a number of options of what might be going on with all these newspaper articles, rumors, stories. The first possibility is that the government is disclosing. And I maintain categorically they are not disclosing, because if they wanted to disclose, they put up the president or the head of the CIA and tell us what's going on. They are not disclosing, nor are they covering up. If they were to cover up, they would do what the Canadian and every other government in the world is doing, and that's just shut your mouth and not talk about it, and the story would go away. I maintain they're doing something in between. They're wrapping information with disinformation and putting the story out to continue to manage the story so it doesn't get out of control. I bring up a fourth one here because this one has been raised quite a bit in the last couple of days, and that is that all the stories, all the UFO stories over the years have been to disinform the UFO community. If that were true, it hasn't worked very well, because all they've basically done is to try to hide the building, is to start the building on fire. It's quite clear that everybody now is inspired. Lots of stories are being done by newspapers. So the idea that they may disinform people is, to me, totally crazy. In the last couple of days, Tom Delonge, who is sort of the focal point of this latest UFO disclosure story, put a message up and then pulled it down. He does this, I guess he's told to do this, I'm not sure why, but the idea is to put the message up, leave it up for a few minutes, and then take it down. And he's actually quite happy about how the December 16th New York Times, Washington Post, Pentagon, or Politico story worked out. And he writes a letter to all the people, I'd like to thank you for your support. And he goes through this whole thing about the fact that he's very happy, and that there's going to be more trickle over the months ahead. I want to thank you all again. I am one of you. I am a truth seeker. And that was Tom DeLonge. That was December the 29th. So Tom is very happy about it, says there's more stuff that's going to come out. And the guy, I believe, who runs his operation is Jim Semivan. Here's a photograph from New Year's that Jim had on his Facebook page, and he seems pretty happy about what's going on as well. So whatever was done, it appeared that it went as planned, and they are claiming, as are many people, that this is only the beginning of many leaks in the upcoming days and months. These two men are key to the story. Harry Reid, former Senator Harry Reid on the left, and Bob Bigelow, both from Nevada. Reid, there was an article just today came out in a Nevada paper. Reid actually stated that it was John Glenn who helped inspire him to get this $22 million funding to investigate UFOs. And Bob Bigelow was questioned by this newspaper, and he is no longer talking. There's a number of disclosure efforts that appear to be going on. The one that we mostly talking about is the Delonge operation with all the high-level military people, and the stories come out of the New York Times, Washington Post. But there's also a documentary that now I'm less certain is actually going on, and this is supposedly being run by Dr. Ron Pandolfi, who is rumored to be the man who may have briefed the last 6 presidents on UFOs, the man who controls the keys to the UFO story for the government. And there's a story that this has been going on for a year now, that they're going to do a documentary, and it will deal with the Avery and with the idea of a portal. And I have less faith that that may be actually what's going on. We got some indication something else might be going on. But anyway, we'll deal with that later on. The Condign is a UK report. This has been leaking out for the last year. And I'm again told that this stuff will be leaking. They said it by the end of last month. It didn't happen. Now they're saying this month there are these files coming out where the UK will actually confirm the reality of the UFO that landed at Rendlesham in 1980. And the last one is one that I brought up before, but again has been raised on Open Minds Forum, and that is this idea that Hollywood is dropping ideas into different movies and documentaries. And the main one that seems to have appeared in the last year is about portals. And as, interestingly, the guy who was the liaison to Hollywood for the CIA, when you check, you find out he's still a consultant in Hollywood. So it may be that kind of operation where Chase Brandon or somebody else is putting these ideas into documentary, because there's a lot that do have suddenly have these portals, which is again a story that there's a rumor that they're going to leak the portal technology, that this actually exists. They're going to make a confirmation. And a Counterpart, you can see this show called Counterpart. I was actually contacted by somebody working on the show. This is going back many, many months ago, and telling me that he figured this was some sort of disclosure operation. The Beyond, A Wrinkle in Time, and then there's one in Jumanji movie, and Twin Peaks has portals. So you can see all these portals have suddenly appeared in Hollywood productions. This is one that was very controversial. One of my associates got a message after the Tom DeLonge story that said, "Thank Donald Trump," and one other researcher also confirmed to me that he got the message, and it may have come from Ronald Pandolfi. That's what we think. And a lot of people, and today I got a third message, which again indicated that Donald Trump may have given authorization for this latest disclosure. There's a lot of opposition to this. There's a lot of people who have what I think is more like conspiratorial views, that Donald Trump is not read in, that Donald Trump's an idiot, that he's doesn't know anything about anything, and that there's some sort of cabal running the show, and Donald Trump every day takes orders from somebody and is only doing what he's told or is not told anything. I'm more of a person that believes that the U.S. government works by the Constitution, that there are many high-level people in the government, and that if everybody was violating the Constitution, someone would take a walk. We've had 14 administrations that have dealt with this subject. Nobody's taken a walk. So I firmly believe that this thing is being run by the law, and according to many strict rules, and I'll get into that a little bit later. We actually have somebody who's very up on security and how this works, who is about to answer some questions for me, and I think he will confirm this is one of the questions I put to him. Is the government run by the law, or is it, anybody can do whatever they want? The idea was that Donald Trump didn't even know about the $22 million story till 4 days after the story broke in the New York Times, which is pretty hard to believe, because the rumor is that he watches TV news, Fox News, 4 to 8 hours a day, and follows what's going on in the New York Times. And we know that the $22 million UFO study story ran into Fox on exactly the same day that it was broken in the New York Times, and it seems quite unbelievable that Donald Trump didn't see that. On the third day after the story broke in the New York Times, his press secretary took a question on UFOs, and the press secretary stated that the office knew that story was there and that they might take a question, but they didn't think anybody would ask the question. So it seems very unlikely that everybody in the White House knew what was going on except for the president. So I think this is more sort of an old conspiratorial theory that that there's some dark force that's running the UFO cover-up. I firmly believe it is being done by the law and by the Constitution. And there's another story that came up that said that Mullis, the director of, or the Secretary of Defense, didn't know that Lou Elizondo, why he had resigned for 3 months, that he didn't know until the night before the story broke. And that seems highly unlikely that he wouldn't know that his top aide, why this guy resigned. So this goes back to this Trump thing. Does Trump know? And this is up in the air. Some people say he doesn't. I believe that he was briefed, and I mentioned this in many past things as to exactly who briefed him, when the briefing took place, in terms of the UFO subject in general. This is one of the things that's come up. There's a lot of controversy now about this video that has come out. And one of the things that we noticed was that the Washington Post gives credit for the video to the Stars Academy, whereas the New York Times gave credit for the video to the Department of Defense. So a lot of confusion came about what happened with this, not so much the story about the $22 million program, but about the video that was attached to the New York Times story. The CIA has, at the same time, and that story was supposed to be a Defense Intelligence Agency story. That was the video of the Nimitz, and then a couple days later, the CIA again puts up this photograph and says, it has an article on how to photograph a UFO. So you have both the Defense Intelligence Agency and the CIA leaking this stuff into the public. Now the video problem, this is one of the things that rose after the story broke, is there was people claiming that there was a problem with the video that was released. So I'll just quickly go through the controversy that arose and what people are saying. You have a $22 million program. Nobody disputed that. That was not questioned. There was a statement that there was 24 videos. So there's the one that was released had some controversy around it, but you have got to keep in mind there are 24 videos. So whether the first one is good or bad doesn't really matter, because apparently there's a lot and they're all coming out. And there's material, there's hardware, which is what I've heard, maybe the next shoe to drop, that they're actually going to bring this hardware. Photos are very easy to discredit. Everybody knows that with modern technology, photographic evidence is almost useless. But if they start bringing out material with bizarre characteristics to it, then you're going to see a little bit different reaction, because it's a little harder to discredit that kind of stuff. And apparently the material is coming out. And there are supposedly 74 reports, 38, and then 36 technical reports that are also coming out. And there's an experiencer study which very much interests me, that's also coming out. But the problem with this video, we'll go through the problems here. One of the things that came out was, and we knew this right from the word go, on the day that it was released, I've known some reporters. I got one of the reporters to get permission from his editor to file an FOIA, and he got the permission. They filed the FOIA. He was asking me who to file it with. At first we were going to file it with the Department of Defense, and it turned out it was a Defense Intelligence Agency, and they've actually moved it. The Defense Department moved it there. But the key issue of the video was nobody's disputing the $22 million study, but immediately the Defense Department said, we did not release a video. And this reporter asked him, well, what do I do? Where do I go? And he said, I'm sorry, sir, I can't help you with that. And that is a story that now the newspapers have sort of picked up, is the fact that there's sort of a backtracking, and this has to do with this video. As you can see here, it's acknowledged it was CNN ran the story and said that there was an acknowledgement by the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense is saying absolutely they did not give authorization for this video. So, or they did not release the video, pardon me. This is a statement. I went back and looked at the statement, because the big person that's behind this whole thing is Bob Bigelow. And there was a number of interviews where he had sort of hinted the fact as to what was going to happen. And this is 2013 interview that he did with George Knapp. And in that, he actually basically says this is coming. He said, I think that there is a sub rosa, an effective sympathy towards this in other areas and circles that might be government connected, that may feel the time is right for more honest delivery of the truth connected to the existence of the phenomena. So Bob had actually stated in 2007 that he had a new partner and that he was working on this thing. Then in 2013, he again says that he believes what he calls it confirmation, that they would confirm, which is the story I heard, which turned out to be true, that high-level government officials would come out, they would identify themselves as high-level officials, and they would say the phenomena is for real. So the story that Elizondo gave was that he had made arrangements with the Navy and a program office within the Undersecretary for Intelligence to release the F-18 videos. This controversy raged, and then Dr. Eric Davis came up, and I've known him for a number of years, and I say he's highly reliable. He has worked, he was the chief physicist for the NIDS group, very, very sharp guy, now working as assistant to Dr. Harold Putoff, and I say whatever he says you can basically take to the bank. We put some questions to him, and he is actually going to answer a number of questions that I have about this, but he did answer the question about the video and with this confusion about the fact that the Defense Department is not making, acknowledging it or what this whole controversy is about. And this is what he said. Yes, the U.S. Navy, Naval Intelligence, and all the fighter pilots interviewed by the Naval Investigation into the encounters had confirmed the reality of the FLIR videos, including the associated radar data. This data was stored in a program office's archives. The data got declassified and released to the public, but the chain of custody remains classified to prevent tipping off foreign enemies on the identities of intelligence personnel, their assigned offices, specific intelligence programs that were involved, and the technology, content, origin, the data itself. So no, the chain of custody will likely never been revealed to protect highly classified, highly sensitive sources and methods. This is standard military intelligence protocol. So basically what it is that this, there is a chain, sort of a chain of custody that I guess was confirmed by the New York Times, but it remains classified. So you have the video, but I guess there's always going to be this controversy about the chain of command actually proving that this is a actual video from the Defense Department. The second problem that came up, and this again came up on #1 day, and this was later became very questionable. On the day that the video was released, the Defense Department said that they didn't release anything, and on the very same day, Ron Pandolfi, this man who's sort of rumored to be the CIA guy and that briefs the president and in charge of this thing, immediately, within hours, called it a hoax. And he said this is his sort of his guy who puts his sort of statements out. This is Dan Smith said Ron called to say that the allegations of the Nimitz encounter are a scam engineered by Helen Coots with his old friend Leslie Kane. The two articles would never have made it past the editors in the old days, but now the New York Times is desperate for readership, along with all the other outlets. And I guess we should let people know that I just learned today there's at least one more article that's been worked on by the New York Times, because somebody contacted me who was interviewed for it. So Ron immediately called it, and the question is, how did he call it so fast? And that's when I started to think that maybe he had something to do with this this claim of this video that came out, because he knew right from the word go. He said that this was a hoax. And then on January the 1st, there was another indication that maybe he was behind it, and that was his spokesman, Dan Smith, stated, and they write in this poetic sort of way. Dan Smith writes, there are three of us. I have the truth of the kingdom. The princess, who's Ron Pandolfi's wife, has the key to the kingdom. Footman, that's Ron Pandolfi, is our foot soldier. He is in the chain of command. He is point man. He rides shotgun, if you will. The opening salvo of our campaign has been fired. It was a shot heard around the world. Our gray lady, and the gray lady is the New York Times, has opened Pandora's box. He continues, that's all, folks. The trap has been set. The honeypot has been set out. The bees are already on the scent. Are we talking months or years? Maybe we're talking weeks. So when I saw that, I immediately wrote Dan Smith and I said, are you making a claim that Ron Pandolfi was behind this leak? And at that point, he said, we'll take the credit if no one else wants to. And when I made that public, then all hell broke loose. And it was like the Hadfields and the McCoys, and it was like just really sort of a battle from the other side. And this is the side with Tom DeLonge, and not so much Tom DeLonge, but Eric Davis stepped in. And the story, of course, that Ron Pandolfi had actually put into WikiLeaks through Julian Assange was the fact that this was faked. And so Eric Davis came back, and Eric has been around for a long time. He knows all the players in the intelligence community, and he said Pandolfi and his mentally ill twitbird Dan Smith had no role in the New York Times article or in Lou Elizondo's AATIP program at DOD. My boss, who's hell put off, and I were subcontractors to Bass, which was the contractor of record to the Luis Elizondo program. Nobody associated with the program wanted anything to do with Pandolfi before and after he left the CIA. He had a very bad reputation with the intelligence community. So I posed some other questions. I'll leave those related to this statement here. But he basically shot back that as far as he's concerned, Ron Pandolfi had nothing to do with it. The key that I think may have something to do with it is Ron, if this is a constitutional system, Ron is the guy that should be running the whole operation. And the other thing was that I was told, and this goes back at least a year and a half ago, that when Jim Semivan, who runs the Tom DeLonge operation, left the CIA, he was briefed on UFOs, and the briefing was done by Dr. Ronald Pandolfi. I've written a lot about Pandolfi over the years, and the only time they ever wanted to correct me, Dan Smith challenged me to stop talking about something, to change something, and that was when I brought up the name Jim Semivan. And that may be because this was the main man. And if Ron was running this operation, and I picked up on the main guy who's running it, it was at that point they said he didn't exist. Then when I showed them photographs of Jim Semivan, then the story changed. Oh, he did exist, but that's not his name. And that is, I think, the story they're sticking to right now, is that they have no association with Jim Semivan. But if you look at the, as I pointed out in past updates, if you look at Tom DeLonge's operation, you'll see all sorts of ex-CIA people in all sorts of categories that are on his board. And I find it very hard to believe that Ron Pandolfi, if he is with the CIA, doesn't know who all these people are and all these players are. So the problem 3 is the video itself. This has been gone through. I'm not going to go through it in this video. There was John Lear and other people who claimed that there was problems with the video, the audio in the video, the fact that the thing stayed in the middle of the screen, the way these guys were talking. There was all sorts of things, but I'm not going to go into that. What I will point out at this point is the fact that this is not the first time that video came up. Everybody sort of assumes this is new, this is unique. This video was around before. This video had been leaked into the internet, I'm not sure how long, at least 6 months ago or more, and then it was pulled from the internet. And I have a friend in Europe who's very good at audio and video, and he told me where to find it. So here's the original video. It's doesn't have the voice that you hear on the one that was released in connection with the New York Times article. But here is the other video, and you will see it's a little bit different. It actually has a daytime shot at the end of it, but it appears to be sort of the same, taken at the same time. So the question with this is that why was this video leaked, pulled, and then why did it suddenly appear in the New York Times with oversight over it? So here you have this video, and a couple of people have put this video up, but this video was on the internet earlier last year and then disappeared off the internet, and we happened to find it in an archives. Now, the Tom DeLonge trailer, people will say, well, they don't believe this could actually happen. You could actually change it. I don't have the copyright to the trailer, but the Tom DeLonge, one of the trailers was changed. And I could show it, but I don't have copyright to show it. There's a trailer, and in the trailer, it is redone. And the word threatening is taken out of the trailer. And I think I've showed it in one lecture, but there has been a a change in a video that came out of the Tom DeLonge camp. I'm not saying Tom DeLonge did it. I think Tom DeLonge is just doing what he's told, and that there are some very high-level people who are carefully unveiling this program. And with all the people, whoever they are, I believe they're all just doing their job, and they are doing what they think is best to get this story out. And I do believe this story, this whole thing is to get this story out with the least amount of trouble. And I think they're all working for the same ends. Here's the silver lining to this whole thing. Even though there's controversy now with this video, and the thing is that this is only one video. There are 24 videos. So this people that think this story is over are sadly mistaken. I've heard some of the stuff that's going to happen, and it's not over by a long shot. It has only begun. The second thing is it gave power to a dead story. If you remember when Tom DeLonge did his October the 11th news conference, it was kind of big. Nobody really picked up on it. The media didn't pick up on it, and the story went away. And everybody had sort of forgotten about the story. Everybody was saying Tom DeLonge was a big scam artist, that he was just trying to gather money, that he wasn't going to produce anything, and this is all just to get people's money. And then suddenly, December the 16th, when the video comes out, then suddenly Tom DeLonge is the new Jesus. He's like the Messiah, and suddenly everybody thinks he's walking on water. So you got to remember that this revived that Tom DeLonge promise already made in October, when they already in October said they had the videos. The next thing is congressional hearings. Former Senator Harry Reid has called for congressional hearings. Tom DeLonge indicates that congressional hearings will happen. So if people wanted this as disinformation and to throw people off the UFO subject, the horse may already be out of the barn. It may be over already, that we are going to have some sort of congressional hearing, and people are going to end up starting to testify under oath as to what's going on here. The media is now awake. That's probably the biggest thing, is hundreds of media outlets did this story, and the consciousness has been raised. The media realized they've been had. There was a question into the Whitehouse press room, and even though I have contacted that reporter a couple times, he still has not come back to go back to the press secretary and get the answer to his question. Does Donald Trump believe in UFOs, and is he going to refund this program to investigate UFOs? But the media is now doing stories, and I've heard a number of different rumors of different media that are not only just repeating other people's stories, but are actually doing their own research. And some of these have very powerful sources inside the government. And I'm talking mostly about the Washington Post and the New York Times, who have sources who can get into intelligence and can get actual answers that the average reporter on the street cannot get. This whole story, the December 16th thing, may have speeded up the dumping, where people are now starting to dump. I have numerous people coming to me with various stories that I never would have got before, inside stories and stuff like that. So it's almost like people have now been given permission to talk about this, and people are starting to talk. This is sort of where I'll leave it. This is one of the people who's working with Tom DeLonge. This is Gary Nolan. It's from Stanford University, and he posted, because he's on the inside as well, he knows what's happening. He says, "You ain't seen nothing yet," and that's exactly what I've heard. As I said, Nolan is part of this group where they're working with experiencers, where they're working on the brain pattern and the DNA of experiencers and people who have been injured by UFOs. So he said, "You ain't seen nothing yet." And then the source who has been the best for me over the last 2.5 years on this story, this is what he told me the day it happened, and this is, I believe, from what I've heard. I do know there is a whole lot more to come. This was just enough to pop the bubble, just enough to make us beg for more, just enough to create a frenzy. I am told that over the next month, it's going to get very real, and I've heard the same thing. So I want to thank you for listening, and I'll do another update once I get the answers from Dr. Eric Davis, who is one of the people on the inside and who also understands how intelligence works and how these programs work inside the American government. Thanks for listening.